It was supposed to be a regular afternoon at Roosevelt High School. The lunch bell had rung, the hallways echoed with laughter and sneakers squeaking on polished floors, and students spilled out into the courtyard like water from a tipped glass. But for Amara and Ayana Carter, identical twins with cocoa brown skin, deep expressive eyes, and quiet confidence, this day would unfold in a way that none of their teachers, classmates, or even they themselves expected. They were known around school as the quiet girls, always together, always kind, and always minding their own business. They weren't flashy, didn't seek popularity, and didn't run with the loud crowd. They were strong but calm, polite but distant. What most people didn't know, what not even their closest friends fully understood, was what lay beneath that calm surface. These girls had been trained since they were 6. Trained not just to defend themselves, but to read the energy. In a room, to stay grounded under pressure, to strike when there's no other choice. But no one knew that. Not at Roosevelt High, especially not the bullies. Tyler and Cole had always thought of themselves as untouchable. Sons of influential families, built like linebackers and always moving in packs. They had a history of pushing kids around, cracking jokes that danced on the edge of racism and sometimes went far beyond the line. No one ever called them out because people were afraid. Teachers looked the other way. And when they saw Amara and Ayana eating their lunch alone that day, sitting under the old tree near the edge of the courtyard, something ugly flickered in Tyler's eyes. "They look like they're too scared to speak," he muttered to Cole with a smirk, tossing his apple core to the ground. "Let's have a little fun." Amara and Ayana felt it before they saw it, that shift in the air, that heaviness that creeps into your skin when someone's watching you for the wrong reason. Ayana glanced up and saw them walking over. Slow, deliberate steps, mocking confidence in every move. "Don't look," Amara whispered. "They're just looking for a reaction." But they kept walking toward them. "Hey," Tyler called out, his voice loud enough to turn a few heads. "You two lost or something? This area's for students." Ayana's eyes narrowed slightly, but her voice was calm. "We are students." Cole laughed. "You sure? You don't look like you belong here." The insult was subtle, but the tone wasn't. Ayana's fingers curled slightly around her water bottle. Amara placed a hand gently over her sister's wrist, not out of fear, but to remind her that they were still in control. That they always had options. More students started to notice the scene unfolding. Phones were already out, some pretending to scroll while secretly recording. The twins weren't naive. They knew how fast things could spiral. "You got something to say?" Tyler asked again, stepping closer. "Or can you only speak when you're told to?" Amara stood slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "We don't want any trouble," she said. "So why don't you just keep walking?" That wasn't what Tyler expected. He blinked for a second, caught off guard by the calm strength in her voice. But then his pride kicked in. He hated being told what to do, especially by someone he thought he could intimidate. Cole stepped beside him. "Or what? You gotta cry to a teacher? Run home to your mommy?" Amara didn't flinch. "No," she said. "We just know how this ends, and you don't want that." A murmur ran through the nearby students. No one had ever seen the twins like this, not scared, not backing down, but also not acting like fighters. There was something still, something powerful in the way they stood. Not angry. Not loud, just ... ready. Tyler scoffed and reached out like he was going to grab Amara's backpack. "Let me see what you're hiding in." Before he could touch her, her hand moved, fast, precise, not violent, not harmful. Just enough to knock his wrist away and make him take a step back in surprise. "What the—" he started. "You should leave," Ayana said, her voice lower now, steady like a warning before a storm. Cole looked around and noticed that even more students were watching. A few were whispering, some even filming. But no teacher had come yet. No adult to stop things from escalating. And that's when Tyler's pride took over completely. He shoved forward, fast and aggressive. But it was a mistake. Amara moved first, sidestepping with a fluid motion and gently redirecting his momentum. He stumbled forward, nearly falling. Before he could recover, Ayana had stepped between him and her sister, not in defense, but in calm control. Her feet planted, her balance perfect. The crowd gasped. Phones were now fully up. Even the school's star basketball player had put down his lunch to watch, but the twins didn't strike. They didn't shout. They just stood there perfectly. Still, perfectly aware, Tyler's face turned red, more from humiliation than anger. "You think this is over?" He spat. "You think just because you—" A loud voice suddenly cut through the courtyard. "Tyler!" "Cole, step away from them, now." It was Coach Daniels. Big, imposing, always watching from the second-story gym window. He'd seen the whole thing. And he didn't look pleased. The bullies froze. Coach stormed over. "You boys better hope. The footage doesn't make it to the office before I do." They tried to protest, to claim the girls started it, but the crowd's silence spoke volumes. Everyone had seen the truth. As the boys were led away, Amara and Ayana slowly sat back. Down. Their hands were still, their breathing normal. But in their eyes, something had shifted. The school had seen them. Not as victims, not as targets, but as something far more dangerous to bullies, uncheckable, what no one knew, what still hadn't come out yet. Was that the girls were national-level martial artists? Black belts in multiple disciplines. Their parents, former self-defense instructors, had raised them not just to fight, but to never need to fight unless it was the last option. They had mastered control, but this wouldn't be the last test, because later that same week a new video surfaced online, not from the school, but from an entirely different scene, a video of a black teenage boy on a crowded bus, giving up his seat for a tired, pregnant white woman. He didn't ask for anything, just quietly stood up and helped her sit. And then she handed him a note. No one knew what it said. But that moment would connect to the Carter twins in a way no one could have imagined. And their story was only just beginning. The video of the bus incident started quietly. No flashy edits, no loud music. Just raw, grainy footage captured from a shaky phone, showing a crowded city bus somewhere in Atlanta. The teen in question stood tall, dressed in a plain hoodie and worn-out jeans, earbuds in, minding his business. He looked like any other kid, quiet, respectful, tired from the day. But what he did caught the internet's attention. A pregnant white woman had boarded the bus, clearly exhausted. She clutched her belly, scanning the seats, but no one moved. People pretended not to notice. Some were glued to their phones, others simply turned away, but the teen stood up without hesitation. No words, no grand gestures, just a calm decision. He tapped her gently on the shoulder and motioned to his seat. She smiled faintly, clearly surprised. As she eased into the seat, she reached into her purse and scribbled something on a small slip of paper, handing it to him without a word. That was the moment someone started filming. The paper, the gesture, the nod she gave him, quiet, meaningful. And then the camera caught the teen reading the note. His eyes scanned the words once, twice, and his whole expression changed. He didn't smile, he didn't cry, but something in him shifted. He folded the note, slipped it into his pocket, and looked out the window as the bus kept moving. That clip exploded online. It was posted to a local community page first. Then a few national accounts picked it up, then news outlets. No one knew who the teen was. No one knew what the note said. But everyone wanted to know. Back at Roosevelt High, the Carter twins didn't even see the video until a day later. They'd been keeping a low profile after the courtyard incident. While they didn't face any trouble, there were whispers in the hallways, now curious eyes, quiet admiration, and of course a few students who looked at them differently. Not in fear, but in awe. Amara scrolled through her phone during study hall when she found the clip. At first, it just looked like another random act of kindness. But when she watched it all the way through, something clicked. She paused the video, rewound it, played it again, then turned her screen to Ayana. "Does he look familiar to you?" she asked. Yana leaned in. Her brow furrowed. "Wait, is that—" Amara nodded. Jalen Davis. They hadn't seen him in almost a year. Not since the summer martial arts camp in Montgomery. The three of them had trained under the same instructor, lived in the same dorms, ate the same bland cafeteria food. Jalen wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, but he was sharp, focused, and he had a quiet strength that stood out even among the best students there. What's he doing in Atlanta? Ayanna whispered, her eyes still on the screen. I don't know, Amara said. But whatever was in that note, it hit him. The mystery started to pull at both of them, not just because they knew Jalen, but because they knew how careful he was with his emotions. At camp, he never let anything shake him. He was composed, disciplined, always thinking 3 steps ahead. But in that clip, when he read the note, his guard dropped just for a second. And that second was enough to say everything. Later that evening, back at home, their parents noticed the shift in the girl's mood. You two okay? Their father asked, setting down his book. Yeah, Amara said. We just saw someone we knew online. Their mother raised an eyebrow. Someone from school? No, Ayanna replied. From training camp. Jalen Davis. That name got their dad's attention. Jalen, quiet boy, very sharp. Wasn't he the one who used to stay back after sessions to help clean the mats? Amara nodded. Yeah, he's in that viral video on the bus. Their mother took a moment. The one who gave up his seat? Yes, Ayanna said, and the woman gave him a note. We don't know what it said, but he looked shaken, not in a bad way. Just like it changed something. Their dad exhaled. Slowly, well, sometimes the smallest gestures carry the biggest weight. And Jalen's the kind of kid who pays attention to the small things. That night, neither of the twins could sleep. They kept thinking about the video, about the note, about the way Jalen had reacted, and about how that moment had gone viral. Without him even knowing at school the next day, the buzz about the twins had started to fade. Tyler and Cole had been suspended for 3 days, and although they denied everything, the videos and witness accounts told a clear story. But something else had shifted in the halls. Amara and Ayanna were no longer the quiet girls. They were respected. People looked at them differently. Not with fear, but with curiosity, and with a kind of cautious admiration. Still, they didn't feel comfortable in the spotlight. They just wanted things to go back to normal. But that wasn't going to happen, because 2 days later, a man in a gray suit arrived at Roosevelt High. He asked for Amara and Ayanna by name. He wasn't law enforcement. He wasn't a teacher. He introduced himself as Mr. Langston, and he said he worked in community outreach for a private leadership organization. When the twins sat down with him in the counselor's office, he handed them a sealed envelope. This was passed along through a trusted contact, he explained. It's from someone who believes you two might be able to help. Ayanna frowned. Help with what? Mr. Langston leaned forward slightly. Jalen Davis. The twins froze. How do you... Amara began. He held up a hand gently. There are people watching him now. Not in a bad way, but with concern. The note he received on the bus wasn't just a thank you. It was something more. Can you tell us what it said? Ayanna asked. I can't, he replied. But I believe Jalen will. If you choose to help. Amara looked at the envelope. It was heavy, handwritten, her name and Ayanna's. Written in neat ink across the front, inside it was a plane ticket. One for each of them. Destination, Atlanta. You don't have to decide now, Mr. Langston said, rising from his chair. But this moment, it's bigger than it looks. Something's unfolding, and Jalen's at the center of it. He's going to need people he can trust. As he left, the room fell quiet. The twins looked at each other, same eyes, same breath, same heartbeat, and felt the weight of something they didn't yet understand. What had Jalen gotten involved in? What was in that note? And why did it feel like they were all being pulled into something far bigger than a random act of kindness? 3 days later, the Carter twins stepped off the plane in Atlanta. It was warm, sticky even, and the air had that mix of exhaust, city noise, and summer heat that clung to your clothes. Neither of them spoke much on the flight. Their thoughts were full about Jalen, about the note, about the envelope that had brought them here without any clear explanation. Everything felt like a puzzle, And the pieces didn't fit just yet. A car was waiting for them just outside the arrivals terminal. Not a limo, not anything flashy, just a dark sedan with tinted windows. The driver held a sign that read a Carter. He didn't ask questions. Just helped with their small bags and said softly, "You're going to want to rest a little. We'll be at the facility in 20 minutes. Facility. The word echoed strangely in Amara's mind. She glanced at Ayana. Her sister shrugged slightly, but her fingers tapped a steady rhythm against her thigh, a sign she was uneasy. They were trained fighters, yes. But even the most disciplined person knows when something feels ... off. Car took them through winding roads that gradually left the bustle of downtown behind. Trees thickened and buildings gave way to long stretches of quiet neighborhoods and gated compounds. When the car finally stopped, it was in front of a large, modern building made almost entirely of glass and steel. It looked more like a research center than anything else. Inside, they were met by the same man, Mr. Langston. This time, he wasn't alone. A woman in her late 30s stood next to him. She wore a simple dress suit and had a tablet in her hands. She introduced herself as Dr. Eliza Warren, a behavioral researcher who worked with young leaders in crisis programs. "We don't bring people here unless we believe they can make a difference," she told the girls, leading them down a quiet hallway. "Jalen was brought in 2 days ago. Is he okay?" Ayana asked. Dr. Warren paused. "He's overwhelmed, not in danger, but not at peace either. The note, whatever was in it, it shook something awake in him. Since then, he's been on edge, but not scared, determined." They entered a room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a training field. There, in the center of the field, was Jalen, alone, running drills. His movements were sharp, aggressive, more intense than Amara remembered. He was pushing himself hard like he was chasing something invisible. "Has he said anything about the note?" Amara asked quietly. "Only that he knows what he has to do now," Dr. Warren said. "But he won't tell us what that is. He only agreed to speak to you." The meeting happened that evening. Jalen was quieter than usual. His eyes carried something new, heavier, deeper. He didn't smile when he saw them, but there was relief in his face. "You came," he said simply. "Of course we did," Ayana replied. "What's going on, Jay?" Jalen didn't answer right away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, the note. He handed it to Amara. She unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was neat, almost formal. But what struck her wasn't how it was written, but what it said. "You don't know me, but I know who you are. What happened to your father was not an accident. If you want answers, find the woman in the yellow scarf. She be at the Liberty Church this Sunday, 11 a.m. The room went still. Jalen looked at them and said, "My dad died last year. Car accident." "At least that's what we were told." Amara's heart dropped. "You think it wasn't an accident?" "I know it wasn't," Jalen said. "My mom told me bits and pieces after it happened. He was working on something. Something big, classified," Ayana whispered. "Government?" Jalen nodded. "He was an analyst for a federal contractor. Never talked about work. But before he died, he started acting strange, worried, always checking the house alarm, erasing his messages, and then he was gone." "And this woman on the bus?" Amara asked. "Who is she?" "I think she knew him," Jalen said. "Or worked with him. She never said a word. Just gave me this, but look at the timing." "I get this note out of nowhere, and days later, strangers start watching our street. Unmarked cars. People asking my neighbors questions about my mom and me." Ayana felt a chill run through her. "So what do we do now?" she asked. Jalen looked at them, his voice low but steady. "We go to that church, we find the woman, and we get answers." But it wasn't that simple, because just 24 hours later, something else happened. While reviewing surveillance footage from the outside of the bus, footage that had been made public only recently, local security analysts noticed something strange. A black SUV had been following the bus. Not just once, but across 3 separate camera angles, and not just following. Watching. And not just that day. The same vehicle had been parked near Jalen's school 2 weeks prior. It was all starting to add up, but not in a comforting way. The deeper they looked, the more they found signs that Jalen's life had been under observation for a while now. Maybe even before his father died. Meanwhile, back in Atlanta, another layer was quietly unfolding. The twins weren't the only ones brought in. Across the country, in different cities, other teens were receiving similar messages, some via notes, some via digital codes, all with connections to past government employees who had vanished, died under mysterious circumstances, or were accused of leaking classified data. And all these teens had one thing in common: they were all connected to someone powerful who had fallen suddenly and quietly. Dr. Warren and Mr. Langston weren't telling the full truth either. They were part of something bigger, something trying to uncover a hidden network. A system of individuals who were using young people as keys to expose something buried deep inside government records. And Jalen? He wasn't just a random teen who gave up a seat. He was the first crack in the wall. The twins sensed it. The questions were growing faster than the answers. And Sunday was coming, but someone else was also watching. A man in a long coat stood across the street from the church 2 days before the meeting. He wasn't there to pray. He didn't carry a Bible, just a worn photo in his hand, one of Jalen. And his father at a science fair years ago? The man looked at the photo for a long time, then slipped it back into his coat and walked away. There were pieces moving on every side. And the Carter twins were right in the middle now. They'd come to help a friend, but they were walking straight into something they didn't yet understand. Sunday morning arrived, gray and quiet. The kind of day where everything felt slower, heavier, like the world was holding its breath. The Liberty Church stood at the corner of a quiet Atlanta street, its old stone walls and stained glass windows looking like something out of a storybook. It was peaceful on the outside. But for Jalen, Amara, and Ayana, the peace felt like a mask, something hiding what was really waiting inside. They got there early, too early maybe. The front steps were empty. No sign of the woman in the yellow scarf, no strange cars. No movement at all except a few birds fluttering across the rooftop. Jalen stood still at the base of the steps, eyes scanning the area. His nerves were obvious, but he kept his hands in his pockets, trying to seem calm. "You sure she said 11? Ayana asked softly. Jalen nodded. "That's what the note." Sighed. Amara looked around, her instincts quietly on alert. "Then we wait." They sat on a bench across the street, pretending to just be kids passing time, but their focus was sharp. Every car that drove by, every person that turned the corner. Their eyes followed everything. At 10:58, a woman appeared. She wore a mustard-yellow scarf wrapped around her head, sunglasses, and a long black coat. She walked with purpose, no hesitation, no glance over her shoulder. She stepped into the church without even pausing. Jalen stood. "That's her." The twins followed as he crossed the street. Inside, the church was dim, with soft organ music playing in the background. The pews were mostly empty. Just a few older folks scattered around. The woman sat near the back, third row from the end. Jalen approached slowly. He didn't sit next to her. Just stood at the aisle, waiting. She turned toward him, removed her sunglasses, and studied him for a long moment. "You're his son," she said. Jalen nodded. "You knew my father?" "I worked with him for over 5 years." Amara stepped closer. "What happened to him?" The woman looked down for a moment, then back up. "He found something he wasn't supposed to. Files buried deep in a federal data system. Records of unauthorized surveillance programs. Names of people being watched, manipulated, sometimes even framed. He tried to report it the right way through internal channels, but someone shut it down. 2 weeks later, he was dead." Jalen's jaw tightened. "They said it was a car accident." "They lied," she said. "It was meant to look like one, but it wasn't." The silence that followed felt too big for the space. The church seemed quieter now. The organ had stopped. The woman leaned forward slightly. "He knew they might come after you. That's why he hid the backup drive." Jalen froze. "What drive?" "He stored everything. The files, the proof, the names. And he hid it somewhere only you could find. He told me, 'If anything happens, tell my boy to look where he last felt safe.' Does that mean anything to you?" Jalen's mind raced. Last felt safe. The words spun around his head. Memories blurred together, childhood moments. Trips with his dad, camp, a small cabin near Lake Sinclair, that was it. He used to take me fishing, Jalen said quietly, every summer. We had this cabin, he called it our hideout. The woman nodded slowly. That's where you'll find what he left behind. Before he could say anything else, the heavy church doors creaked open. 3 men entered. All dressed in dark suits, sunglasses on even inside. They didn't look like churchgoers. Amara touched Jalen's arm quickly. We need to move. The woman reached into her coat and handed Jalen a folded slip of paper. Coordinates to the cabin. You can't trust anyone from here on out, not even people who say they're trying to help. What about you? Ayana asked. The woman shook her head. They already know I'm involved. I'll buy you a few minutes. Before Jalen could argue, the woman stood up, calmly walked past the men in suits, and exited through a side door. 2 of the men glanced toward her but didn't move. The third one, taller, with a sharp jaw, focused directly on Jalen. They saw us, Ayana whispered. Jalen tucked the note into his pocket. We have to leave now. The 3 slipped out the opposite side of the church, down a narrow hallway that led to a back exit. But as they pushed open the door, another black SUV pulled up in the alley. 2 more men stepped out. They're surrounding the place, Amara said. Jalen looked around. Back inside, up the stairs, bell tower, they ran. The old staircase creaked under their feet, but they didn't stop. At the top was a dusty attic with a broken window that overlooked the narrow alley behind the church. Just below it, another small roof led to the back of a closed bookstore. Ayana was the first to speak. We can jump. Jalen looked at her like she was joking. She wasn't. Without hesitation, Amara climbed through the window and leapt. Landing on the bookstore roof with a practiced roll, Ayana followed. Jalen hesitated for half a second, then jumped too. They hit the roof and ran. Below, the men in suits realized what was happening. Voices shouted. Doors slammed. The chase had begun. The twins and Jalen disappeared into a maze of back streets, cutting through alleyways and side roads, their feet barely touching the ground. They didn't speak. They didn't look back. They just moved, knowing that every second counted. By the time they reached the nearest train station, they were out of breath, sweaty, and on edge. But they had escaped for now. As they sat on the near-empty train car, Jalen pulled out the slip of paper. Coordinates, the next step. And as the train rolled forward into the late afternoon light, none of them knew what was waiting at that cabin. But someone else did. Back in the SUV, the man with the sharp jaw made a call. They've made contact. And they're heading for the Sinclair property. A pause. No, don't stop them. Another pause. Let them find the drive. Then we move in. He hung up, staring out the window, a cold smile forming on his face. Everything was falling into place. But not in the way the kids hoped. Moral of the story: never underestimate quiet strength. Sometimes the people the world overlooks, those who stay calm, kind, and unnoticed, are the ones holding the most power. Amara and Ayana didn't need to shout or fight to be strong. Jalen didn't need recognition to do the right thing. True courage often hides in small acts: standing up, speaking softly, giving up a seat, or seeking the truth even when it's dangerous. The story teaches us that justice doesn't always come from loud voices or power. It often begins with kindness, discipline, and the courage to question what others accept. In a world that sometimes rewards cruelty and fear, those who stay grounded in truth, loyalty, and quiet strength are the real fighters.